It's 1942. World War II is raging at full force. And a British soldier is handed a mission that sounds like madness. We are going to ram an old destroyer into Hitler's strongest dock and blow it sky high. The target was the Normandy dry dock, the only place on the Atlantic coast big enough for the German battleship Tirpitz. If the Allies can destroy it, they don't just damage German pride, they change the balance of the entire naval war. But pulling this off means sailing straight into enemy guns. So how did a single ship and a few hundred commandos manage it? In 1942, St Nazaire didn't look like the kind of place that could change the course of a world war. It was a small French port town on the north bank of the Loire River, home to around 50,000 people. But hidden behind that quiet surface was something priceless to the German Navy: the Normandy dry dock, the largest in the world when it was finished in 1932. It was the only dock on the entire Atlantic coast big enough to hold a giant battleship, especially one like Tirpitz. The port itself was a maze of basins, locks, and narrow waterways. First came the Avant port, two long piers sticking into the Atlantic. Then two lock gates controlled entry into the Bassin de St Nazaire, keeping the water level steady regardless of the tide. Past that was the bigger Bassin de Pignolet, and tucked between the basin and the Loire was the giant dry dock, with its southern end facing the river and its northern end pointing into the basin. A small jetty, the Old Mole, jutted into the Loire nearby. This dock had one purpose before the war: to serve the massive ocean liner SS Normandy. But once Germany occupied France, its meaning changed. Suddenly, this single structure became critical for Hitler's naval plans. The reason was simple: Tirpitz. In May 1941, after the Battle of the Denmark Strait, Germany's other giant battleship, Bismarck, tried to flee to St Nazaire for repairs. She never made it. British ships caught her and sank her. But that incident proved one thing: if Tirpitz ever broke into the Atlantic, St Nazaire was the only safe place for her to hide and repair. By January 1942, Tirpitz was operational in Norway. Churchill and the British Admiralty were terrified of the idea that she might slip past the blockade. One successful breakout could wreck entire Allied convoy routes. The British tried bombing Tirpitz 4 times. All failed. They lost 12 aircraft, so they changed the question. If they couldn't sink Tirpitz, what if they destroyed the only dock she could ever use? Bombing St Nazaire was too risky, since there were too many civilians and no precision bombs. Sneaking in SOE agents was almost impossible because the explosives required were too heavy. The other option was a naval attack, but that estuary was too shallow for big ships. And then came the idea: what if we ram a destroyer into the dock gate itself? That crazy thought became Operation Chariot. By early 1942, Britain was tired, bruised, and running out of time. Air raids kept coming. Supplies were sinking in the Atlantic. German U-boats and the giant battleship Tirpitz were slowly choking the country. Churchill knew something harsh. If he didn't score a win soon, morale would collapse before American support kicked in properly. And that is how a mission that sounded insane on paper began. The Germans had one place on the entire western coast of Europe where Tirpitz could safely be repaired: the massive St Nazaire dry dock. It was a fortress on water: thick concrete, heavy guns, U-boat pens, and 6,000 German troops guarding it. Air attacks couldn't touch it. A normal sea assault would get slaughtered. Every inch of the place screamed one thing: a warning that don't even try. Churchill ignored that warning. He picked Lord Louis Mountbatten to plan something bold enough to work. And Mountbatten delivered a plan so wild that even the Admiralty first said, "No way." The idea was simple and suicidal. Take an old destroyer, pack it with explosives, disguise it to look German, ram it straight into the dry dock gates, and blow the whole thing up from the inside. A ship as bait, a dock as the target. Hundreds of men, knowingly, walk into a trap. But time was running out, and Churchill approved it. The destroyer chosen was HMS Campbeltown, a tired WWI ship that needed a miracle to stay useful. The Navy stripped it down, removed guns, cut off funnels, angled the remaining ones to look German, and hid 4.5 tons of explosives inside the bow, under concrete. Lieutenant Commander Stephen Beatty would command the ship. Lieutenant Nigel Tibbets, the explosives expert, built the bomb and would activate it hours before impact. Alongside Campbeltown, dozens of small motor launches carried commando teams led by Lieutenant Colonel Charles Newman. Their job: land after the impact, destroy pumping stations, generators, fuel lines, and gun posts, anything that kept the dock alive. They trained like crazy for 3 weeks, but there were problems from day one. A German U-boat spotted the convoy, but radioed in the wrong direction, accidentally protecting the British ruse. Fishing trawlers in the estuary had to be stopped and scuttled to keep the mission secret. RAF bombers, meant to distract the Germans, failed because of heavy cloud cover, which only made the Germans more suspicious. Still, at midnight on March 28, 1942, the British flotilla entered the estuary, flying German flags, sliding through shallow waters that even local sailors avoided. Every planner agreed this mission shouldn't work, but now the question was, could they pull off the impossible before the Germans realized what was coming? By the night of March 27, 1942, the British convoy had already crossed a point of no return. 30 men on each wooden motor launch, a single destroyer packed with explosives, no air support, no backup plan, just darkness, shallow waters, and a fortress full of German guns waiting ahead. At 2 p.m. on March 26th, they had sailed out of Falmouth in 3 neat lanes, with destroyers in the center and small boats on the flanks. But nothing about this mission went neatly after that. 2 French fishing trawlers appeared out of nowhere. The British had to pull the crews on board and sink the ships. This was a harsh decision, but the entire mission depended on silence. By 9 p.m., the convoy turned toward the Loire estuary, with their engines low and lights off. A submarine beacon blinked in the distance, guiding them like a lighthouse only they could see. Campbeltown flew a German flag, pretending to be one of theirs. It was all a game of bluff now. Overhead, RAF bombers appeared, 35 Whitleys and 27 Wellingtons, but thick clouds ruined the plan. Only 4 planes dropped bombs on St Nazaire. The Germans noticed something strange. The bombing showed no pattern or purpose. It seemed completely random. It made them uneasy. Why were British planes wasting time here? By midnight, alarms were rising across the port. Capitan Mecca sent out warnings. He suggested everything from a parachute landing to a diversion. But something in the air did not sit right with them. The searchlights were turned off, the guns were paused, and the troops left their shelters. The Germans were awake, but confused. That confusion was the only shield the convoy had left. At 12:30, the British ships scraped over the estuary shoals. Campbeltown hit bottom twice. Every man on board already knew. If she got stuck here, the entire raid died with her. Then at 1:22, everything exploded into light. German searchlights lit up the river like a stage. A signal flashed. Identify yourself. MGB 314 bluffed back in perfect German code. A few guns were fired. The British responded coolly, "You're firing on friendly ships?" This deception was successful in buying them a few seconds, but seconds matter in war. At 1:28, the last lie dropped. The German flag came down. The white ensign rose. Every German gun opened fire. Campbeltown accelerated, taking hit after hit. Men were killed at the helm. Others stepped forward without hesitation. The destroyer roared straight toward the dry dock gates, cutting through torpedo nets. At 1:34, she slammed into the dock with the force of a hammer. The bow fell like paper. The ship lodged itself deep into the gates, exactly where the explosives waited. Now the commandos had only one job left: destroy everything around them, fight until they ran out of bullets, and somehow survive a port crawling with German reinforcements. But here is the question that hangs over this night. How did an old destroyer, a handful of commandos, and a pile of wooden motorboats pull off one of the most impossible raids in military history? By noon on March 28, 1942, the Germans thought they had won. HMS Campbeltown sat quietly at the dock, captured, harmless, and waiting to be examined. What they didn't know was that the ship was basically a giant time bomb. Right at midday, the hidden explosives inside the destroyer finally went off. The blast was enormous. It tore the ship apart, ripped through the dock, and instantly killed the 40 German officers standing on board. Hundreds more soldiers on the nearby quay were caught in the explosion too. In a few seconds, the most essential dock on Hitler's Atlantic coast was gone, and it stayed unusable for the rest of the war. The next evening, the situation worsened for the Germans. The British had also fired special delayed torpedoes that were designed to explode long after the battle. These went off on March 29th, causing more German casualties and adding to the confusion. Panic spread through the town. German troops, already shaken by the explosions, became paranoid. They believed British commandos were still hiding nearby. This led to tragic moments where nervous soldiers fired at anything that moved, causing unnecessary French civilian deaths. The British losses were also heavy. Out of 241 commandos, 59 were killed or went missing, and 109 were captured. The Royal Navy lost 85 sailors, and over 20 were taken prisoner. Only 5 commandos managed to escape all the way back to England through Spain, which was a journey almost as dangerous as the raid itself. But despite the cost, the mission completely changed the war at sea. Without the St Nazaire dock, the massive German battleship Tirpitz never dared sail into the Atlantic. It had nowhere safe to return. This single loss saved countless Allied ships, supplies, and lives. Ironically, the air raid meant to support the mission ended up confusing instead. This mistake later influenced decisions during the Dieppe raid, where a bombing run could have helped but wasn't used. The St Nazaire raid was a bold move that cost lives but made history. For their courage, 89 men were awarded medals. 5 Victoria Crosses went to Lieutenant Commander Beatty, Lieutenant Colonel Newman, Commander Ryder, Sergeant Durant, and able seaman Savage. Others received Distinguished Service Orders, military crosses, Distinguished Service Medals, and French awards like the Croix de Guerre. Each medal told a story of bravery under fire and impossible odds. The Germans were shocked and furious. Hitler couldn't believe the British had sailed right up the Loire with little resistance. He fired General Oberst Karl Hilpert and ordered heavy fortifications along the Atlantic coast. Concrete bunkers went up at ports, gun positions were reinforced, and the battleship Tirpitz never dared to leave Norway again, remaining a threat, but never seeing open waters until it was destroyed in 1944. The raid's impact went far beyond the battle. St Nazaire became a proud battle honor for the commandos. Survivors formed the St Nazaire Society in the UK, keeping the memory of their comrades alive. Memorials were built in Falmouth and at the National Memorial Arboretum to honor the men who risked and gave their lives. The name Campbeltown lived on too, with new Royal Navy ships carrying it, including a frigate launched in 1987 and a new one announced in 2021. Operation Chariot showed the power of courage, planning, and determination. Though many lives were lost, the raid left a lasting mark on the war and inspired generations. This raid, contrary to popular belief, was not just about sinking docks or blowing up ships. It was about proving that ordinary men could achieve extraordinary things against impossible odds. If you want to look back at more such daring raids and operations from the past, hit subscribe because we have yet to bring you the best stories.